Hey guys, welcome back to Andy's Dinosaur Reviews, and the hits keep on coming as we now have our second Jurassic World Rebirth figure to take a look at, and this time we actually have an entire set, as we've got the Spinosaurus Danger Set, and this is one that is currently up for pre-order on Target's website, and is set to be released on June 1st, I believe, but I was lucky enough to get this from my good buddy, who lives in Canada, who actually had just sent it over to me, and again, surprised me just like he had with the Inostrand Sevia, so really excited to take a look at this one now, and of course a massive thank you has to go out to him for hooking me up with this awesome looking set. I have been really excited for the Spinos, so I'm definitely hyped to be able to take a look at one. And then here on the back you can basically see what all is included in the set, basically showing the set off before we open it up. But we're going to go ahead and open it up right now anyway, so let's do that and then we'll bring everything in. So we've got Dr. Henry Loomis in the set, our first chance to take a look at some of the human figures in the Rebirth line, and I don't know if it's going to stand right now. There we go. And I hit the camera, and we also, of course, have Zora Bennet, who is, again, another one of the main stars of the film. Of course, Scarlett Johansson, which it does actually look like her, kind of. It looks pretty decent. And then, again, got to get her to stand now. There we go, off to the side. We've also got some extras with like a flare gun and some weapons and stuff, which is pretty fun, as well as a case here. Whoa, focus, there we go. A really cool yellow case. And the one that I'm sure everybody's waiting to see, which would be the Spinosaurus here, which I really feel like the new design of the Spinosaurus is just continuing to grow on me when it comes to the Jurassic World Rebirth version. I know many people at first were kind of upset that they didn't use the JP3 design, but as time goes on, I just feel like I appreciate this design a little bit more and more, and am definitely starting to warm up to it a lot. Not that I really disliked it or anything in the first place, because I've always kind of liked it, you know, from the initial reveal, even in the trailer, I quite liked it. I just would have really liked to have seen the JP3, version of the Spinosaurus come back at some point, but who knows, maybe we'll see it in the movie. We don't know, I guess, quite yet, but regardless, this new version of the Spino is pretty cool. So I'm going to go ahead and readjust the camera, and then we'll get a closer look. So we're going to begin with the Spinosaurus, because why wouldn't we? You can see, starting up here at the head sculpt of the Spino, it looks pretty decent. We've got the mouth closed. Of course, we do have an articulated jaw, which is definitely a fun aspect for the figure. We can see the skin texture looks really nice. If we turn it to the other side, same deal. Again, the skin texture looks really quite impressive. Throughout the course of the face, we have a bit of a different style of skin texture as you move along the snout before you move up into the back of the head, which does feature some pretty nice looking scales leading along. Same deal actually for the lower jaw, as you have a different type of skin texture moving along here before picking up some larger scales as you move up into the back of the lower jaw. We again have an articulated jaw. As you can see, we actually have an articulated jaw for both pieces. You've got the upper and lower jaws, which both articulate. As you open the mouth, we can see the tongue inside the mouth there. Looks really good. Definitely a really nice pinkish tone that's nice and natural, and very impressive texturing on the tongue, which is always a good thing. And we do have the pink tone that moves through the entire mouth, even up there on the upper side of the inside of the mouth. The teeth do look a little wavy, though, when it comes to the way that they are applied in there. And that is kind of good, I guess, and kind of bad, because what it means is that they are the newer, softer kind of rubber teeth. And when you look at them from the outside, I think they don't look bad at all. They are given a white coloration, and they do look pretty decent as a whole. Like, they definitely have a much sharper and more impressive look on them now compared to the way that the teeth used to look. And as you can see, we do have that section of interlocking teeth, kind of, where the teeth on the lower jaw extend out up into the upper jaw, which is nice, and it does close quite smoothly, as you can see. So that is really well done. We do have a brownish tone of color for the upper side of the Spinosaurus, and then a light tone, like a white here, for the lower jaw, moving down into the throat and into the chest. As we lead up here, we almost sort of have like those Spinosaurus crests like you would expect to see, except normally you would see like a crest in the center of the head of a more accurate Spinosaurus, whereas this version we have kind of almost like a slight crest on the outside, and then the same deal over on the other side of the head. The eye is painted pretty nicely with a light tone, kind of like a greenish tone, and then a black pupil. It also does have a nice gloss coat, and you can see the detail up here on the top of the head also looks pretty good. As we move down into the neck, you've got a fairly smooth transition from the brown of the upper body to the white of the lower body. We can see the scales looking really quite nice as well. You've also got some scoots like osteoderms that move down along the course of the neck of the Spinosaurus. Leading along, we do have neck articulation up and down, which works pretty decent, not too bad. You can also actually go a little bit left and right, which is nice. So some nice posability for the neck of the Spinosaurus. We can't swivel though, maybe like a slight tilt, but that's about it. But the body's kind of shaped in more of like an oval sort of fashion, which kind of prohibits a full swivel. As you continue to move down into the body, you can see that brown does look a slight bit different from up here. Like the shade is just slightly different. And I don't know if maybe that's just the way it kind of lays on the material or what, but it does have a little bit of a darker, I would say, actually lighter here, darker in the head, and then darker here, but also slightly different as far as the shade compared to the upper part of the head. So I don't think that was done on purpose by Mattel, but it is something that I do notice here looking at it. As you move back and my camera refuses to focus on the skin texture, you can see the body is primarily just really bumpy skin texture, bumpy scales and stuff throughout. As you lead down into the arm, we can see the musculature of the arm. We have the elbow back here. Everything looks pretty decently done right in that area. You have articulation just forward and back. It doesn't come out away from the body or anything, so only forward and back. As you move down into the hands, we can see the fingers are sculpted pretty nicely as well. The nails also. I kind of wish they'd start maybe giving them like somewhat rubber nails so they can look as sharp as the teeth do, because they do still have a little bit of a rounded look. They're not too bad, you know, they do still look fairly sharp actually, but not too bad. Just not that great. Unfortunately, no painted nails. What a surprise. And also, we can see that that white tone moving down along the throat does disappear as you move down into the chest of the Spinosaurus. The underside also features a very different style skin texture, kind of crocodilian-like, I would say, for the underbelly of the Spinosaurus. As you move up, of course, you've got the sail, and this one does look pretty cool because the color scheme is different from the other Spino that's coming out from Mattel, so that shows you that I believe there are 3 different versions of the Spinosaurus in Jurassic World Rebirth as far as the colors go, and you can see that this is a different variant from the more mainline Spinosaurus that we had seen initially. So this one features kind of like these like orangish sort of tones moving along the back, and then the gray striping down. And that does look pretty cool. It's also fairly smooth when it comes to the transition back into the brown body. Not great, but not too bad. As you move up into the sail, you can see the skin texture looks pretty close to the way it looks down here in the body, with just really kind of bumpy scales throughout. We also have the tops of the spines basically kind of sticking out of the top of the sail of the Spinosaurus as you move along. Leading down into the leg, we can see the muscle definition, of course, for the thigh. We've got the knee right there. The scales, again, continue to look pretty close to the way that they look in the body, but maybe slightly different here, maybe slightly less bumpy moving down the legs. You've got the kneecap right there, the calf muscle, and then, of course, the foot sculpt with some scoots down the toes and no painted nails. What a surprise. We do have swivel articulation for the ankle, which is pretty standard for a lot of Mattel figures, as well as leg articulation forward and back. As we move back into the tail, you can see a few skin folds and wrinkles leading up from behind the thigh as we lead out into the paddle-like tail. The tail does have a curve to it as you lead out toward the end, and unlike the new other Spinosaurus that has like a ton of articulation, basically part of the action feature of that figure moving out through the tail, this one only has articulation right here, which does have a little left and right, but not a whole lot, more up and down than anything, and even that's slightly limited, I would say, but it does have some okay articulation. Again, you're not going to be able to swivel this because of the shape of the way, you know, the tail connects. Otherwise, if it was more rounded, you would have the option to kind of swivel it, but you're not going to get that here. Also, as you move out into the tail, the scales do tend to look a little bit different, a little bit more vibrant actually, but just a little bit different than what we see moving through the body. The upper part, where we have the upper part of the paddle-like tail does still look pretty close to the way that the body looks, especially when it comes to the way that the sail looks, but down here it does look a little bit different. And then down here on the underside we have again that kind of like underside of a crocodile style scaling, which does look pretty cool. Also, there is a seam right here straight through the end of the tail. It does not articulate or anything like that, it's just there, which is a little bit of an eyesore, but it's not too bad, I guess. Then when we take a look at the opposing side, of course, you're going to see pretty much the same thing. You know, the style of skin texture and everything should remain pretty much the same on both sides for the figure overall. The biggest difference would be the positioning of the leg. The leg is trailing on this side, whereas it is leading on the initial side. So no real huge differences as far as that goes. But it is a pretty cool Spinosaurus. Definitely a fun new version of the Mattel Spino. And then when it comes to Henry Loomis, you can see his head sculpt looks pretty good. He's got some glasses on. He has some facial hair and everything. We can see the eyes also painted pretty nicely. Up here on the top of the head, we have the hair sculpted nicely. There is some fine texturing to the hair, which does look pretty good. It is painted with a dark brownish tone. As far as articulation goes, you do have the ability to swivel the neck and a little bit forward and back, but not a whole lot. Moving down, we've got a really nicely sculpted shirt with pockets on the front, which of course you can't actually use, but you can see all the waviness and creases and everything to the shirt, which does add a nice element of realism to the figure overall. Moving down through the arm, we can see that his sleeves are pulled up to the elbow. Again, the wrinkles and creases are nicely highlighted in that area. Leading down into the arm itself, we can even see like some musculature to the arm, and of course the fingers and everything as we lead along. Articulation wise in the arm, you do have the ability to move the arm out, and then of course forward and back, and that can actually swivel all the way around if you want. And then you do as well have elbow articulation, forward and back, and can swivel. As you continue to move down, we do have the belt here sculpted pretty nicely, also painted with a brownish tone, and then we move down into the pants. The pants as well, again, feature all sorts of wrinkles and creases. He has pockets on the side. You know what, I'm going to move the Spinosaurus out of here because it is distracting apparently for the camera. And then as you move down again further, you do have the boots, which are really nicely sculpted as well and painted with a brownish tone. Used that brown kind of almost gives them a little bit of a dirty look at the same time, but they also have a shine, like a strong shine to them, a satin shine. But as you move down through the body, again, when it comes to the articulation, we've really only taken a look at from the waist up. We do have a swivel in the midsection, as well as forward and back leg articulation, and out away from the body, so he can do some splits. And then you have knee articulation, which can also swivel. You know, pretty much the standard when it comes to most Mattel humans. Also, we actually have the watch over here, which is painted and everything as well, painted with a nice silver tone. So that's pretty cool. Also, here's the back of Henry Loomis if you just wanted to get a look at that. But then we have Zora Bennet, and you can see she as well looks pretty good. I can definitely see the likeness of Scarlett Johansson there in her face. We have the eyes painted out, the lips painted out, and again, of course, you have a hat on her, which is also very nicely painted with a black, and then her hair sticking out with like a ponytail out of the back of the hat right there. You can see some nice fine detail to the hair as you lead along, obviously painted with a blonde tone of color. Articulation wise, it's probably going to be pretty much the same as what we had just seen on Henry Loomis. You know, the ability to go left and right and just a little bit forward and back. She also does have like a ammo belt basically over her, which isn't actually attached like you can, so you can move it around. I don't know if it's removable. Yeah, maybe you might be able to weasel it off if you lift the arm up. Yeah, definitely you could. So that's pretty cool. As you move down, you can see her shirt as well. Again, sculpted pretty nicely. Obviously, her shirt is a little bit tighter than Henry Loomis's is, so you don't see as many creases in the shirt, but it is painted with a nice bluish tone. It is short-sleeved as well, so we can see the majority of her arms. She also is wearing a watch, which is painted with a black coloration. Articulation-wise, it's going to be just as it was, again, for Henry Loomis, forward and back. Also can, come out away from the body. You have the elbow, forward and back. Also can swivel. And then as you move down, again, you're going to have the midsection articulation, just like we had seen on Henry Loomis. As we lead through, you can see the pants painted with a black tone. Her pants do feature all the same sort of creases and everything like we had seen on Henry Loomis, which is definitely a plus. She also can articulate her legs forward and back. They are a little bit stiff right now, but forward and back, also out away from the body, and then the knees forward and back and can swivel. And then as you lead down, you do have boots. Of course, they are on quite the expedition in the film, so you definitely would expect them all to be wearing boots. Her boots are painted with a green and very nicely sculpted. And then again, you can see the back of her looks pretty good as well. And then of course we also have some extras, as we have a knife in here which is painted entirely with a black. It's also quite flexible, I guess, to make sure that nobody hurts each other with it. I can definitely see that being a piece that would be lost fairly easily, so that's something to keep in mind. We as well have a flare gun that is painted with an orangish tone, also quite small, so again, something to really be careful with so you don't misplace it and lose it. And then we also have another gun here which is a bit more impressive than the others. Also features a little bit of paintwork here, like as far as variation of color goes, you can see just a little bit, especially with this yellow back here on the back. But it is very, very impressively sculpted. There's no doubt about that. That is maybe one of the nicest weapons as far as the sculpt goes that I've seen come from Mattel so far. And then we have the crate that is here as well, which again is decently sculpted, painted with a very bright yellow, and I do believe does open up. Yep. So you can pop it open and then store everything inside, which of course is going to be very helpful when it comes to not losing these little pieces. So we'll just go ahead and throw those in there right now. But again, it is pretty decently done on top of everything. As far as sizes go, I did want to compare both human figures. As we can see, Henry Loomis is a little bit taller than Zora. So for a height for Henry Loomis, you're looking at about the 3 3/4 inch range, or around 9.5 centimeters, but for Zora Bennet, she's about 3.5 inches or 9 centimeters. For a size comparison, we have Robert Muldoon stepping in next to these three, giving you again a pretty good idea of the size and the fact that Muldoon is slightly taller than all of them because of his hat. And then for a size on the Spinosaurus, for a length, you're looking at about just a hair over 16.5 centimeters, or again a hair over 42 centimeters. And then for a height, currently to the top of the sail, I would say you are at about 7.5 inches or 19 centimeters, maybe just slightly over. For a size comparison for the Spino, there is Mr. Papo T-Rex, the Attack Pack Colovosaurus, Robert Muldoon, and the Collect Day Human Being next to our Spinosaurus. And you can see again, it's a pretty decently sized Spino without being absolutely massive or anything like that. But for another comparison that I think is going to help us out a little bit better, here is your standard sized Mattel Spinosaurus next to the version in this set. And as you can see, the standard Mattel Spinosaurus is a lot larger, showing you that this Spino is definitely on the smaller side when it comes to Mattel Spinosaurus figures. And if you want a little bit of a different look, again, if we turn them both completely sideways looking at each other, you can see again that obviously the more traditional Spinosaurus from Mattel is a whole lot larger than the Danger Set version. And if we bring in a Mattel T-Rex, you're going to continue to see that, as this is the Epic Roarin' T-Rex, which is very clearly a lot larger than the Spinosaurus. And then if we bring in a Wild Roar figure, you can see again that the Spinosaurus is obviously a bit larger, showing you that, again, it's not all that small, but it's by no means a large figure. Also, just in case you wanted it, here is the scan code for the Spinosaurus before I forget about that and you guys miss that. So this brand new Mattel Jurassic World Spinosaurus Danger Set is pretty fun. It's definitely a nice set overall, especially when it comes to grabbing two of the human characters from the film in one pack, as well as an alternate Spinosaurus compared to the more mainline release. And I actually really quite like this one, and one thing I really like about it is the fact that we don't have a whole lot of articulation in the tail. Not that that's a bad thing, because trust me, I love articulated figures, but the way that the seams look on the tail of the new one, you know, they're not the greatest. It's not terrible, but it's nice to have a tail like this where it's kind of uninterrupted. Another thing that is nice about this figure is we do actually have paintwork from head to tail. Unfortunately, no nail paint, but it is nice to see the paintwork running along the back of the Spinosaurus from the sail all the way out into the tail. It would have been nice to see some of the lighter tones moving along the underside the entire way through, but it is what it is. The sculpt is pretty darn nice on the Spino as well, definitely replicating what we know from the trailer so far for the Spinosaurus. I think it looks pretty spot spot on to the way it looks on screen, and definitely a huge plus as far as that goes. The colors are fairly smooth when it comes to the transitions and stuff, and I do also like the fact that they gave us a different variant of the Spinosaurus with this release compared to the one that we have in the main line, again because we know there are a few different versions of the Spinosaurus in the film. This also does feature some articulation, not the greatest articulation in the world, but good enough. And then of course some accessories and stuff, which just helps again when it comes to not only the playability but the display factors of the set on your shelf. So definitely a set worth picking up if you ask me. I will include a link in the description to where you can pre-order it right now on Target.com, because the last time I checked it was still available on there, so make sure you check that link, pre-order it, and like, comment, and subscribe, and I will see you in the next review. Thanks for watching.